This is the Honor 400. It costs £400, and in this video I'm going to help you decide whether or not this is the mid-ranger for you. And at the end I'm going to tell you how you can get this phone with way better specs for £80 cheaper, so stick around for that. I think that Honor's vision for this phone was to have modest hardware but powerful software with lots of features. So you're really paying for the software more than the hardware with this phone. You can decide whether that's something you like or not. Now, before we dive into the AI features of this phone, let's talk about this design. Personally, I really like it. The camera design is quite nice looking, and I love this desert gold colour. It has a sort of pinky beige colour on the back glass and on the camera bump, but all of the metal parts are just gold. Almost rose gold, but not quite. Another thing I really like about this phone is the fact that it is only 6.55 inches. It's pretty compact for a modern smartphone. Most phones now are 6.7, even 6.9 inches, so it's pretty comfortable to hold. Now, one thing that you will notice is there's no telephoto lens on this phone, which is very strange for a phone that costs this much. The bezels are uneven and thicker in the top corners and at the bottom, but they're so slim that when you're on YouTube or whatever, you don't really notice the bezel because of how slim they are, especially when using dark mode. Now, here's something that might be a deal breaker for you. IP65 rating. At £400, that is completely unacceptable, but for most people the ingress protection rating isn't that big of a deal. So don't let that throw you off yet, because this phone has some other features that might overshadow the negatives. This phone has an in-display fingerprint sensor and Face ID. It's pretty quick to log into your phone. It's hard to mess up a fingerprint sensor, so yeah, they did a good job. The Honor 400 also has stereo speakers, but no Dolby Atmos. This is what the speakers sound like.
I'm walking alone, the streets are empty. The only thing I can see is my own silhouette. I'm getting stronger, step by step. The clock is ticking, but there's no time for me. I've been flying from town to town, from London to Thailand. I've been all around the globe trying to protect your soul.
Okay, let's talk about the display. As I mentioned earlier, it is 6.55 inches diagonally. There's a resolution of 2736 by 1264, and it is of course a 120Hz OLED panel. I would be concerned if it wasn't a 120Hz OLED panel. But we've seen Apple do this, so you can never be too sure. Now, in all fairness, you don't notice the weirdly shaped bezels at all, unless you're intentionally staring at them. I just like to complain, to be honest. But I really do like how thin they are, because it makes the whole phone feel very compact. This display allegedly reaches 5000 nits of brightness. That's probably a load of bollocks, because literally every smartphone company seems to just make up a number for the brightness. But this phone does get pretty bright outdoors. You'll have no problems looking at this phone in full sun. Okay, now let's talk specs. The Honor 400 has a Snapdragon 7 Gen 3, and the base model comes with 8GB of RAM and 256GB of UFS 2.2 storage. Yes, you heard me correctly, UFS 2.2. Now, while these are very modest specs, performance is of course still great. I just wish we would have got a little bit more considering the price of this phone. Now, the camera is definitely a big marketing point of this phone. It has a 200 megapixel main camera and a 12 megapixel ultra-wide. Now, before you say, wow, 200 megapixel on a mid-range phone is crazy, keep in mind that this is a small sensor, not a massive flagship sensor. So the 200 megapixels has almost no effect and means literally nothing. Now, Honor wants you to believe that because this phone has a 200 megapixel camera, you can zoom in super far and still keep the same quality. It literally says a lossless zoom on their website. This is a complete lie. It's not lossless at all. Quality starts to drop after about 2 times zoom. Like I said before, 200 megapixels does not make this camera any better than a 50 megapixel camera. With that being said, this isn't a bad camera. It takes nice, clear, natural photos and has some nice filters. It has a filter called Authentic, which is a hilariously blatant rip-off of the Leica Authentic style on Xiaomi's flagship phones with Leica branded cameras. I think the camera performs best without the filter. Looks nice and natural. It's not over-sharpened like an iPhone, so I'd say this is more like a Google Pixel processing, very natural and real looking, which I like. Now I'm about to tell you something that will make your jaw drop. Video recording on this phone is capped at 4K 30 FPS. I'm not even going to make a comment on that, or just let it fester in your mind. Here's what video looks like from this phone. The battery in this phone is 5300 mAh with 66 watt charging. It's a decently sized battery, but the charging speed is a bit slow for the price. But that being said, 66 watts will still get you to 100% in less than an hour, so it's plenty quick for most people. Here's the part you're all waiting to see, the software. This phone is running on as Magic OS. Now, to be honest, I hated it at first because I couldn't remove apps from the home screen and there's no app drawer. But luckily, you can add an app drawer in settings. And this also allows you to remove app icons from the home screen, so you get a more familiar layout. Now, the first AI feature I want to mention isn't really a feature, but when you take a picture really zoomed in, it uses AI to enhance the image. This is probably what Honor meant by lossless zoom. In reality, it's just looking at your grainy, low-quality image and giving you an AI-generated image based off of it. Some people might find this helpful. Some people might find it fake and not genuine because it's technically not the same photo that you actually took. It's all down to personal preference, really. In the Gallery app, you get Magic Retouch. This allows you to do things like AI removal, which works very well compared to some other companies. You have Facetune, AI Beauty, for making your ugly mug look a little bit better in your selfies. You get AI Outpacing, which is Honor's version of AI Image Expansion. It's a complete gimmick that I will never understand, but if you want it, then it's there, I guess. The Gallery app also has lots of filters, effects, frames, etc. So it's decent for editing photos, but it does not have a tone curve. So if you're a photographer and you want to properly edit and color grade your photos, just stick to Lightroom. But this is a very feature-packed Gallery app, and I was quite impressed with how much it had to offer. Apart from features, the UI is just pleasant to look at. The animations are nice, definitely better than HyperOS animations. And the blur effects are very strong and very in your face, which I love. It's just so modern looking. Now, I don't think that Magic OS is quite as polished as HyperOS. It feels very much like an unfinished project, to be honest. But it's definitely got a lot of good features and I like the design choices. So I'm curious to see what Magic OS will look like in a year or two. Now, if you want my honest opinion, this phone is great. But for £400, it's terrible value. You can get the Xiaomi 14T for the same price, and you're getting Leica cameras, plus a telephoto lens, and the MediaTek Dimensity 8300 Ultra with 12GB of RAM for the same price. Most likely less, as it often goes on sale. But, as I mentioned earlier, you can get this phone with better specs for £80 cheaper. The Chinese version of this phone has a Snapdragon 7 Gen 4. The base model has 12GB of RAM instead of 8, which even offers 16GB of RAM. And it has a 7200 mAh battery with 80-watt charging. A battery that big and a phone this small is just unheard of, and I think is very impressive. Now, in China, this phone costs about £260, but if you live in the UK or US and you want to buy the Chinese version, it will cost you about £320, because of course it has to be imported. Not only is this a much more reasonable price for this phone, but you're actually getting more features and better specs. So if you don't really care about Google services, then I'm 100% recommending the Chinese version of this phone, as it is superior value to the global version. And in fact, if you buy it from websites like GizTop, it actually does come with Google services. So it's just a better value option in every aspect. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next one.